Welcome and thank you for joining us for Navigating Difficult Interviews presented by Dr. Joan Faber McAlister from Drake University. Dr. Faber McAlister's research focuses on visual and spatial rhetorics in public culture, as well as aesthetics and critical theory, and the means through which social actors are positioned in networks of power, the import of different markers of class, race, gender, and sexuality in sites of daily life, as well as the status, function, and material character of home, are persistent themes running throughout her work. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Joan Faber McAlister presenting Navigating Difficult Interviews.
Thank you for staying. The extra unexpected alarm kind of fits in with the couple of points I wanted to make. The plan was to have about 15 minutes of presenting what might turn out to be of mistakes that I've made and things that have gone wrong, and then about 15 minutes of answering questions or having other people bring up topics that are on your mind and are concerns. I'm not used to using a mic because I do project my voice. So first thing I wanted to say is that when I was a graduate student trying to prepare to go out onto the job market, I had a lot of anxiety, and I was at the University of Iowa, I attended special workshops from the Project on the Rhetoric of Inquiry that were to prepare graduate students for publishing, for going on the job market, for interviewing, and so forth. And I attended these talks, not one, who later became a dean at two different universities, a large one and a small one, had a kind of standard talk that he would give. And it was 3 points, 3 things to remember when you go on a job interview. And I'm going to tell you what I retained from that, what I forgot from that, and then expand on it a little bit with my personal experience. So his 3 points, the first 2 I remembered well. The first one was to have a kind of message, a campaign message, if you will, that is sort of the 3 things that make you and this particular job a perfect fit. How it is a perfect fit both ways. If you can't come up with a good message and you're or prepare for an interview, that might be a sign that they want you to be someone that you're not. They're looking for something that you can do. And sometimes you have to make difficult choices because health insurance is a good thing, visa support is a good thing, but of course it's always more comfortable if you can genuinely find those points of contact where what they need or want is exactly what you do, and something unique in your background, your life experience, your interests that really add depth. So Fred used to say, you have a campaign message and you try to hit it, and when I used to work in politics, we try to hit our undecided voters 3 times, the same message. You bring it up in different ways, right? How it is quite a remarkable fit between you and the second point was to remember that you're always on, he would say, meaning that your interview is every interaction. So whether you're talking with an administrative staff member who's helping you arrange your meals or your flight, or you're talking with somebody's partner or kids or somebody who's in a different department at some kind of social event, the way you treat people who aren't immediately on the search committee does say quite a lot about you. And people, after we interview a candidate, we share information. And sometimes, if you have treated a staff member, and especially an underrepresented, underpaid staff member poorly, that really reflects badly on you, and we think about, like, what are the work here, and do we want to work with someone who's going to, we're going to see a lot of disparity in the classroom with how they treat students. So remembering that you are always on, whoever you're talking to, because you don't know how that information will be communicated, and also because you do want to have integrity and ethics in your interviewing practices, right? So those were the two things that I remembered. And after, 6 months later, maybe a year later, I came back to Fred and I said, I remember the first 2 points. Forgot the most important thing. And this one is so useful that it has helped for, like, other events, not even work-related, but other kind of big deal happenings. Fred said, something will go wrong. Something will not go as planned. Says a lot about what kind of colleague you would be. Handling it in a thoughtful, compassionate, having a sense of humor kind of way, and being able to go on, even when the fire alarm goes off, says a lot about you. The fire alarm goes off, says a lot about you, because, if I went tearing out of here, I'd be like, well, I don't know if every time there's a false alarm in the building, I need a colleague who's going to run out on their students. I don't have time to go teach several classes at once, right? So it has proved to be very wise advice for interviews that I have conducted and had myself in many situations. But the thing I wanted to add on to that was, the something goes wrong part, the something goes wrong part needs a little more explanation, because there's so many different things that can go wrong and that have gone wrong in interviews that I have been involved in on either side. So I did want to mention a few of those things that have gone wrong that I have seen. And then I would love to hear concerns that you have, other things that are on your mind that you're worried about possibly going wrong, or that you've heard about going wrong. So really, I'll go kind of quickly, because we do. Lost luggage and canceled flights. That has happened to me 3 times going somewhere, and it has happened twice with people I was interviewing. And that can be very awkward. The big and ability to get to some clothing. If any of you were on, I don't know if any of you were on my flight. I've changed my travel practices as a result of this. I never check a bag, for one thing. Never check it. Pack smaller. I don't check a bag. But I also, on my flight I was wearing jeans, but they were black jeans. And instead of a coat, 3 layers of shirts. And rolled up in my bag, I'll have like a little other piece of clothing that if I had to, when I went to give a lecture at Vanderbilt, the bag was delivered at midnight, and I had to wait up until like 1 or 2 to get this bag of wrinkled fancy clothes to figure out how to wear for my talk the next morning. And it was very stressful. So I like to have some kind of a backup somehow, or something I could mix around in a particular way to kind of pass in that case. So I bring a couple things with me in my bag. Second thing, forgotten names and faces. So when you go somewhere, you need to study who are the people there. And you cannot rely only on the website for the department or the college. You need to go to multiple sites and find multiple pictures of people from different angles in broad daylight, learn their names, their pronouns, their expertise, because it's very unfortunate, and this has happened to me, when the department website has like one faculty member who is new and younger, the photograph was like a silhouette in the sunset, and I did not recognize her. And not recognizing her really cost me in that interview. It was very, very uncomfortable because there were other reasons why she got ignored, and it was really an ethical issue that I should have researched her better. Just because she's new doesn't mean, right? Junior faculty can really be important points of contact for you. So I'll say that. A third thing, mystery meetings. There's a meeting on your schedule and you can't understand who the person, job title doesn't even make sense. This happened to me once years ago, and I always try to research who people are and why they might be meeting with me. I tried to research it, but I had to dig deeper. I didn't dig deep enough. When I got back, when that meeting went not well, I got back and dug a little bit deeper into like student newspaper articles to understand this person's sole mission as a former pastor with the church was to exercise veto power over anyone who didn't forward the specific religious mission of the college. We had a good conversation. I did some architectural analysis of the chapel that he appreciated, but this was a person was looking to veto someone and hadn't yet had that opportunity. And so what I realized is it wasn't the content of what I said. I think I was probably insufficiently feminine, but also insufficiently deferent to his extreme. He went thumbs down, but it was clear it hadn't gone well. So you need to dig a little deeper. Of course, digging deeper might have told me, I don't think this job's going to be a fit for me. But health insurance is a good thing when you have 3 kids under 4, as I went to a job interview not that long ago, maybe 3 years ago, campus interview, and they didn't tell me about guest teaching, which I usually would do guest teaching. Well, since it's an administrative position, maybe they don't want that. It was not an administrative position, maybe they don't want that. It was not until I had arrived in my hotel on Saturday night, I think, because they had some Sunday meal planned, that I got a frantic email from someone who was not chair of the committee but on the committee to say, do you realize that you're from someone who was not chair of the committee but on the committee to say, do you realize that you're guest teaching this class? And it was a class that not only had I never taught it, I'd never taken it as an undergrad. It was well outside my area of expertise. That can happen. Obviously, do that to me, and it might be a way of kind of tanking an interview. But if you get in a situation where suddenly you're teaching a class, find a way to adapt something you've already done, even like an NCA presentation, and link. And if you can find 3 points of contact with the topic of the course, I looked really quickly. I quoted the usual instructor. I quoted from the textbook, which I had to read from blurbs because, of course, it wasn't free. But you find a way. And then I took something I already had and felt comfortable talking about, and that had some of those themes that I could adapt. And that actually went well. If you have an unresponsive crowd for your job talk or teaching class, you have to find a way to try to connect with them. Even with humor, and when things go wrong during one of those, a couple of things that technology not working, I don't rely on it anymore. I come with 3 different options. I've got it on my phone, I got my iPad, I got my laptop, and I know I can just talk without it. I've seen many people try to use tech and then it fails, and then the committee and the larger group is sitting there watching someone trying to fix their broken visual aid for 15 minutes and calling for tech help. And again, we think, well, this happens in the classroom all the time. how is this person as my new colleague going to move on? Because again, I can't go running down the hall with adapters when I'm in the middle of my own class, right? So if technology doesn't work, you find a way to move on. The show must go on, right? And you don't keep talking about what they would have seen and making them sad about how they've missed out. You just pretend like well, this was just some examples and I can explain them. And then you just make them forget that you had one, right? I once, in a job interview at the place where I now work, I was giving a talk. It was a very, very large class, communication and law. And they still had like the old pencil sharpeners on the wall, though nobody uses those. And I was trying to be engaging, and I walked over and leaned my hand on the pencil. I don't know why. Why do we do these things when we're nervous? And it broke off the wall. What do you do at that point? You just have to, I'm like, what a joke, right? And make, because they'll feel worried. Help them relax. Laughter is one of the ways that people can relax, right? When you have one person who is clearly hostile to you, your research, your whole discipline, that does happen, you try to find out their aims. What do they want that you could help them achieve? A lot of times the person who is allied against you, you can show them that you would actually contribute to their larger goals, right? And there's one vote, goals, right? And there's one vote, there's other people as well. Sudden needs, you handle yourself as well as you can, or find an ally there who can help you. I've written an essay about this, so maybe people know about not being, and they put me in a room, prayer for my meeting with the provost, and it had windows, and I needed to pump. My computer bag just had a breast pump in it, didn't have my laptop. And, I asked, is there a smaller room that I can just practice? Is there a smaller room that I can just practice? And they gave it to me, and, I pumped in there with a coat, but I lost a contact once, and I just went on. Some people may have thought I was winking at them, but if you can't find, the food's not edible for you, you move it around your plate a little bit. Dry mouth, having a bottle of water in your bag. Do not, as one person who interviewed, ask someone in the middle of invited me to lock all of my stuff in someone's office. I didn't have my phone, and there was no clock anywhere in the room. And so I went over the time, and there wasn't time for questions, and questions are important, which is why I need to wrap up. Illegal questions is why I need to wrap up. Illegal questions is a thing that will happen. You will get asked an illegal question. I always try to find out what's behind that isn't illegal, that I might be able to bounce off. I don't like to just answer an illegal question because I think it's bad practice. But I usually try to ask back, are you asking this? And then often they realize, oh, I can't ask that. But what I really wanted to know is, would you like to live close to campus or something like that? Have a message.
You're always on.
You're always on. Yes, exactly. You're always on. Every interaction is an interview. Third thing. Something will go wrong. Something will go wrong. And all you have to do is have a sense of humor and seem like you'd be a good person to work with. When things go wrong, you contribute to solving the problem, right? Questions. What other things might go wrong that you're worried about? Yeah. Yeah. So, it's been a while. Usually I have a kind of eclectic interdisciplinary background in terms of my degrees and my research. And when I'm going someplace that has multiple people from different subdisciplines, which mix with this, something else, like when I interview the place where I am now, it's a cultural studies department that had an anthropology major in it. My undergrad's in anthropology. I mentioned that. It was a replacement position for a senior scholar who I know very well, and I knew exactly what he taught and could talk about how I can teach all of that, except I'll be teaching it from a queer and feminist perspective. And they were all over. They had a big gender studies program. They were all over that. I spread it around about like the classes that I teach, which is what they really need you for, the kind of colleague bridges I might make with other cross differences, disciplinary research differences, departmental differences, different ethics, and something about my research that is, they picked, if they're flying you in, or even getting on camera with you. I forgot to say that on camera I always have a bunch of stuff that doesn't show. It's like taped up around the thing. Well, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing that I've noticed in graduate committees is if somebody really seems like they'd be a great professor there, graduate students will meet afterwards and collaborate on how to build messages for all of the interviewees to make sure that that one really shines. Mm-hmm. So if you can mentor graduate students during that grad interview, I've seen people blow it off, not take it serious. They're just going to wow you and impress you. Graduate students will be like, well, I don't want to work with you. And so
the grad students are so important. The students are very, very important. Yeah, absolutely. Do I want to be mentored by this person? Will I be a priority? Is this person?
I had 3 people interview me at the same time, and they each asked double-barrel questions.
Yeah.
To the point where I got confused, and I ended that interview confused. So, do you have any tips for how to handle interviews where the questions are all over the place?
Yeah, group interviews are very difficult. When I'm on the other side of the table, I try to, because when I worked in politics, that was quite a common thing. There's like 10 people sitting down and firing questions at me, sometimes about like the environmental science. Because a degree in that, I'm like, okay, now I can't tell you about the Bruno snail, but if you want to get people to your events, I can do that. I like to have something with me so I can jot down notes. I like to also, it's helpful to keep in mind that people doing the interview, they're performing for each other, especially questions at a job. They're performing for each other, and sometimes they don't really know what their question is. They just feel they have to ask one to look interesting, or ask one to look interesting, or to make a case for, because there's power struggles going on. I want to again point out that I am the expert on Marx in this department, or what, and so sometimes you have to kind of bounce it back and ask them to restate. So what I'm hearing is notes are just, oh my God, but I look like I'm paying attention, and then I'll try to restate or say, well, are these questions similar, or this seems like a very different thing. You can get them talking to each other, it's so great. Like sometimes they'll talk to each other, it's so great. Like sometimes they'll talk to each other, like they'll disagree with each other, and you can just listen, you can learn a lot. Because you're interviewing them too. And you definitely want to have questions. Like when they say, do you have any questions? No, that's bad. Ask about the students. That's bad. Ask about the students. Ask what they're most excited about, like what courses they want to take. Ask about student culture. Ask about support for, research or innovative teaching. Asking questions like that is really, really good sign.
Adding on, if you meet with undergraduate students, because I've had that happen, be prepared because they will say anything. I had an undergrad that
job interview that I ended up not getting, asked if I was going to play and if I was going to stay long term, or if this job was just a stepping stone. And there were members of the committee in the room when she asked that question, and they apologized profusely.
But then you got to deal with it.
Well, and I answered truthfully that I was planning on staying long term because it was engaged.
That sounds like a great answer.
I mean, it was the truth, so I got lucky, but...
Yeah, didn't this happen in the debate, the governor debate in Florida? Are you going to stay for your full term? It's an awkward moment, right? Yeah, so, and they will ask questions like, are your classes there? We'll, of course, get back to faculty. So, sometimes I try to take a bad question and bounce it back in a different way. Are you asking, like, can I really see myself enjoying living here? Yeah, here's why, right? Or are you asking the kinds of work that my students tend to do? I'd love to talk about that. So, and what was the other thing? Oh, sometimes they'll trash talk their faculty in front of you. And for me personally, I mean, I learned a painful lesson in grad school after being stabbed in the back numerous times. I never trash talk anyone. And if someone else trash talks someone in front of me, says bad things about their teaching, I don't bite. I understand that's a thing. A lot of people like to hear something bad about someone else's teaching or research because they find it flattering. I think it makes you look bad, and you're encouraging an environment where someone will be saying bad things about you when you're not in the room. And so I just don't. When students do that, I try to reinterpret. I'm like, really? Because students do that, I try to reinterpret. I'm like, really? Because, I read this article of hers last week, and she has a lot of passion about blah, blah, blah. I just bounce off. Because sometimes they offer it like it's a treat that they've been encouraged to give, right? And I'm not going to do that. I don't enjoy that. And it violates my own ethics. And we also know that none of these, student hostility is never encountered on a level playing field. We know there's racism, misogyny, sexism, ableism. Like it, yeah. Yeah. You can look it up. You Google what are illegal questions that employers are not supposed to ask you about, but they will. Do you have children? Efforts to find out if you're married. What's the gender of your partner? What's the gender of your partner? Questions about your religious beliefs. Well, there are some schools that we need you to fill out this paper about your personal relationship with God. So then you know where they're coming from. But that can happen in other places too. There are things that close them to those people interviewing. I mean, there are reasons this stuff, a lot of the demographic stuff has been separated. HR can talk to you about your legal status. HR can talk to you about, the kind of insurance benefits you need and so forth. The people on the committee shouldn't be at, but they will. Do you have kids? How old are they? Shouldn't be at, but they will. Do you have kids? How old are they? Are you married? Stuff like that. Sometimes, yeah, and it's very sad. There's still a lot of practice. I've seen horrible things on search committees when people are like, well, he's gay, and we already have one of those. He's gay, and we already have one of those. Are you kidding me? So sometimes people aren't very well trained in how to do interview ethically, or we can't pronounce this person's name, so we better not bring them. You think you're the first person? Serious? Look what they could bring. Yeah. Okay. Other concerns? Yeah.
I've had not search committee members ask me illegal questions when they're making a small talk, and I never know how to handle it.
You bounce around. I usually try to find out what it's about, or my research, or what kind of social events I'd like to do. But And some of that I learned from people who like actually had degrees in law and were coming in to interview for our interdisciplinary law politics. They know how to do that really well. So, they do that really well. So, they'll just like, are you asking about the kind of neighborhoods, neighborhood facilities that are available? They won't say, I have a kid in elementary school. Like, they know, that you can't ask me that. But you try to find out, like, well, I'm curious to know all of those things. I love to, you can tell them you have a dog, like, that's okay. But I don't know, at a Research One institution, you're not even really supposed to have a pet or a hobby, but some of us think you should be able to. Yeah.
So if there's questions that are legal to ask you, like, are the same questions legal to ask them?
You shouldn't ask them, yeah.
So you have kids, like, oh, I got kids. Can it be like a point of conversation?
It has been. Sometimes I've had to make it into a point of conversation. That depends. Honestly, I will say for men or male-presenting folks talking about kids, you may get a lot of applause for that. For women or female-presenting candidates, right? So it depends. And there are, we know there are these assumptions. If you're a woman and you're outspoken, if you're a black woman and you're passionate about your research, are you angry? Are you pushy? Yeah, there are. We know that there are those. I had a candidate get pulled over on the way to campus for driving while black, interviewing for a math faculty position. And he was like, this isn't new. I know how to handle this. It's no big deal. This isn't your fault. Clearly there's some work to be done in this, campus community, and I'm here for it. Smart on his part. He ended up coming, actually. One more? Yeah.
You mentioned female and feminine presenting people, and that brought up a question of mine. So I have an arts background, and I like to dress a little bit more expressively, and I've noticed that some people in the academy do not respond well to that. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you had any advice for just how to present yourself visually. If you had any advice for just how to present yourself visually when interviewing.
Well, so I would put two things together. One is, I would check to see, like, the degree of, I have overdressed for some things in my political work. That was a real problem in some cases. At a conference once, I overdressed. Summer conference, people in shorts, and I'm in a linen suit. I'm like, try to check it out, see pictures, like, what do people tend to wear? But also, the most important thing, for me, and comfort are really, really important in letting me focus on trying to make a connection with someone and speak about myself in ways that make an impression or are memorable. So I put that first. I would consider, like, if there's more traditional this is my most corporate thing that I could do. I'd put a little bit in there if I can. Because I know there are people here from subdisciplines that are more professional than rhetoric, but I'm not going to wear heels anymore. I just don't do that anymore. And I'm confident, and for me, at my age, I also feel like I don't have to wear mini skirts and low cut. Like, I want to be comfortable and just be me. But, so you don't necessarily wear what you find is most flattering for you. You wear what helps you bring forward the persona that is the scholar, teacher, colleague that you feel you could really be at your best. Does that help? Okay, well, thank you for coming and staying in the middle of a fire. If you see me for coming and staying in the middle of a fire, if you see me wandering around, I'm happy to chat. I'm very easy to find. You can email me. I love to mentor junior. That's like my passion. I don't have grad students, but I've sort of picked up grading, and I love it. I love to do that work. So happy to connect with you if you see me around.